Okay, you're on the air.
Great.
Okay, well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to a Zoom meeting of the Zoning Board for the Sleepy Hollow. Tonight's meeting is convened in accordance with the Governor's Executive Order number 202.1, issued March 13th, 2020, which suspends certain provisions of the New York State Open Meetings Law to allow a municipal board to convene a meeting via video conferencing. In accordance with the executive order, the public has been provided with the ability to view tonight's meeting and public hearings, and a transcript will be provided at a later date. I have also confirmed with the village clerk that this meeting has been duly noticed by posting a notice in the Journal News newspaper and posting a copy on the village website. Be advised that tonight's meeting is being aired live on cable TV and streaming live on YouTube. So we have 4 items on the agenda today, and one is a continued public hearing for the application of Dickerson and Jennifer Miles. I'd like to welcome publicly Sandra to the board. She was not at the last meeting, and I don't believe Margaret was either. And so I thought the best thing to do to kick off agenda item 1. I don't have to read the public notice again, but I thought the applicants could provide a brief overview and then discuss any changes they made in the application.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm Niall Kane. I'm the architect for the owners, Jennifer and Dickerson Miles. As you said, we are here for the second time, and because there wasn't really a full board last time, so I guess we have 6 now then, you said, I think?
6 this evening, yes.
Okay, so I will share. Now, I'll go through the whole thing again, or do you, for the sake of the 2, correct? Or
yeah, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah. So let me see if I get this right. I always kind of screw up a little bit here. Is this, okay. All right, you all see my screen?
Yes.
Good. Okay. So so yeah, this is a proposal for an addition to a single-family home that Jennifer and Dickerson Miles own on 3 Terrace Close. It is just directly adjacent to the Phelps Memorial Hospital. This is the site. I mean the survey, existing survey showing the existing house. As you can see, there's quite a large piece of the property to the west. This is actually the side yard, and then there's significant side yard to the east and a significant front yard, and there is quite a tight condition at the rear yard where we are proposing a single-story addition. This is the zoom in a little bit. This is the Phelps Memorial Hospital grounds. This little red tab is the property in question here, 3 Terrace Close. As you can see, there's quite a big buffer here. I'll go through some numbers. Last time we didn't have those numbers, so I've done some research and have numbers for setbacks and distances to various buildings here, because there was some concern expressed last time about any possible new building or new construction that may have some impact on this addition, or vice versa, that the addition may have some impact on, which is not really the case, but I'll cover those numbers later. This is the site plan again, showing the proposed single-story addition here. We've made a slight modification from last time. We're requesting we were requesting a 16-foot variance at the rear yard. Now we've decreased that to 15, and we have the proposed rear yard setback at 10 feet. And we've been able to do that without compromising the design. And 10 feet is also the minimum for the side yard setback. And the reason I mention that is given the odd configuration of the lot, it's as if this is really their rear yard in terms of function, and so it sort of seems as though it's a side yard, and it is in fact essentially a side yard to Phelps Memorial Hospital. this. So this is the house. You can see it's a Georgian style house, very formal, traditional style house. So we didn't want to do any addition that would sort of compete with that nice symmetry and of the house. Again, the addition is going to be largely obscured from view from adjacent neighbors, as well as Phelps Memorial, given the screening that is in place now. Pretty straightforward. Is the front elevation of the house. This is looking a little bit to the west, to the sunroom portion of the house, and this is the garage on the east side of the house. This is that expansive yard that I mentioned to the west. This is looking to the east, sort of corner, a little bit of Phelps Memorial property back here. This is from outside, from the street rather, looking to the west here to the neighbor's house, and to the east to the neighbor's house, which is largely obscured from view with screening as well. This is looking back again towards the west elevation from that large side yard. I guess it looks like this. I think we had that same photo before. These lower photographs here are is the sort of pertinent area in that this is where the addition is proposed addition will be located, just along this line. It's just a single story, and out here 15 feet across this area, and then out across this way. This one's looking to the east, this is looking to the west. So you can see this is kind of, with this tight condition, it's a bit like the side yard here. This is looking towards the Phelps Memorial Hospital, just wanted to illustrate the buffer condition there. It's obscured from view. This is a spring or summer shot when the trees are full. We did add, from last time, we added these photographs, which are winter views. Again, this is the area where the addition is proposed, right? More or less, like if you follow my arrow, I assume you can see it. It's about like that. So we are just looking at the west here, and then slowly rotating around to the north, and in a way you can see how far it is. This is, I think, is a little tent that they're using for coronavirus, that is constructed in the parking lot, just to give you a little reference. That's in the parking lot, and then behind it you can barely see one of the buildings. This is the existing house. Again, it's a very formal setup, so the owners, like the formality of these rooms, but they really want to have something that's more of a sort of an open eat-in kitchen area, and a family room area, and a little screened-in porch. And you can see here their existing kitchen rather is quite tight and not very functional, I guess. Again, this is the elevation. You've seen the photographs, but just to see it sort of drawn here, this is the sunroom area, again, to the west elevation. This is the front elevation, and the rear elevation, and this is where the addition is going to go, which I'll show you in a moment. This is the proposed addition on the back of the house. You can see we're proposing an eat-in kitchen, again, sort of more informal type situation, a TV room / family room area, and a screened-in porch that will simulate the look of this existing sunroom here. And again, this shows the changed setbacks, the 10 feet here from the previous 9 feet. This is, well, this is the front of the house. There's a little portion of the screened-in porch that'll sort of peek beyond the sunroom, just to access the nice sort of stone patio out here from that room. This is the view looking west. Again, this is essentially obscured from the neighbor's view. And this elevation is perhaps more pertinent. This shows the elevation along the Phelps Memorial Hospital grounds, and it's intentionally sort of an understated design, low, just single story. The stucco matched the brick in color, and then this is the little screened-in porch that has the same vocabulary, if you will, as the existing sunroom. Whoops, I meant to zoom into that. What did I do here? I sent you a new, with the transmittal, I guess should be a new document that you got from the last time, just describing the changes, the changes that we've made, and also has some, gosh darn it, sorry. I'm trying to zoom in is what I want to do so you can all see this. I'm pointing out the difference. We've taken a foot off of the building, the width of the proposed addition. And here also, there was some concern expressed, which I understand, you know, what if Phelps Memorial was building something, or would there be ever be any sort of impact between the two properties as it relates to this addition? And the fact is that the zoning code requires a 300-foot setback to any hospital building structure. So it's quite far away. Any potential future building would have to fall within those guidelines or those regulations. There's 50 feet for any accessory structure, little garage or what have you, shed potentially. And as we pointed out last time, the hospital sent a letter saying they have no issues with this proposal. And we also obtained letters from adjacent neighbors who support this project and spoke out at the last zoning board meeting in support of this this project. This other little points here, just that you know, I measured on Google Maps. You know what? I can't actually see this whole letter. Oh, here we go. It's just some of your images on the side. I couldn't see the whole thing. The closest structure on Phelps Memorial Grounds is approximately 450 feet away, and that's measured on Google Maps, so it's rough, but I think it's pretty accurate. The parking lot, edge of the parking lot is approximately 230 feet away, and the driveway setback, which kind of wraps around the parking lot, I could go back to that site image if you want me to, is about 185 feet away. And the thinnest part of that wooded buffer is actually about 175 feet. So again, there's extensive buffer, and Phelps Memorial has no issue with this project. And as I say here, there's no, we feel there's no detrimental, adverse, or undesirable change to any existing current properties within the neighborhood or any potential future development that may happen at Phelps Memorial Hospital grounds. I also, and this is, whoops. This is a document that I sent last time with some small edits. Of course, the coverage of the project now is a little bit less since we took that foot off of the width of the proposed addition. Given the extent of the property, it's actually the bulk of the project is quite small relative to what would be permitted. You know, this property will permit a coverage of 5,173 square feet, which is quite large, and we're well below that number with the addition. And that is also true of the FAR, the floor area ratio. But if I go through all of the 5 points that you folks consider when you consider a variance, I'll just go through them one by one. One is whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by granting the area variance.
You don't have to read each one.
You don't want me to
go to the reason.
But yeah, so but I guess the salient points again are just that I think the fact that the property is so oddly configured, I think it is an important aspect to consider, because you know, we could actually build, you know, a much bigger area, put it to the west of the house hypothetically, and it would have a much larger impact in all of these points than it would than our proposal will. So again, we feel that there's really nothing in these 5 points that is an issue with this particular addition, whether it's self-created. That speaks to, you know, anything you do is self-created, but the fact that the lot is so unusual means that this is really the only practical way to do this addition and have the adjacencies that are important, the adjacencies to the formal dining room and to the other spaces in the building. And we feel it's sort of the best option. again, in terms of its orientation and location as it relates to the house and the adjacent properties.
And I should have mentioned, in addition to the original application materials, we received a letter dated December 7, 2020 from NCC Studio, as well as a letter dated November 17th that was revised as of December 7th, which is on our screen right now, and then the additional plans which reduce the setback from 9 feet to 10 feet. So I know the board had some concerns before. I want to open it up and see if there are any questions from the board about the application.
Could we
Hi, this
close the
is
shared
Lorette.
screen, please?
Sorry, Margaret?
I was wondering if we could close the shared screen so we could see each other.
Oh, do I do that or you do that, I guess? Do I have to?
You close it.
I
No.
close. Okay, I thought maybe that was done by the boss here. Wait, how do I do this? You are sharing the screen. Oh, there we go. Okay. Is that what you wanted?
Yes, please, so we can see each other.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good.
Hi, this is Garrett. I'm glad to see that you guys did scale back some. I did. That was one of my biggest concerns, if you can remember.
Yes,
And,
of course. Yep.
I'm glad to see that. I really am. And
Effort,
then,
of course, to
so that's a great one in your favor. Thank you.
And I appreciate you doing the homework too on the proximity to the hospital, which was also a concern of this board. So we find that additional information.
This is Dickerson Miles, the homeowner. Can we make a comment?
Sure.
Yes.
Hi, it's Jennifer and I. We really appreciate your consideration tonight. We've been, 20-year residents here in the manor in this house, and we love it here. We want to stay here for the rest of our lives. But with COVID and everything, we decided to do this project because my wife and I will be working full-time from home for the rest of our careers. And we feel, and our college-age children are returning, we feel that we need this additional space. And we'd appreciate your consideration in this matter. And that we think that it's a good message for the zoning board to send to all of the neighbors that, reasonable additions and developments to people's houses, are considered and supported in our neighborhood. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I will, unless there are any other questions from the board, I'll make a motion to reopen the public hearing on this application.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on this application present on the Zoom conference today?
I'm the Miles neighbor. My name is Tangdi Garvey. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi. Thank you. I make it quick. I just want to say I'm in support of their addition because we're good friends. I always go to their yard, their house. As the architect or designer mentioned, the side yard really serves as the backyard. So
Can
the
you state your
backyard.
address, please? I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Can you state your address, please?
20 Hemlock Drive, Sleepy Hollow. So the side yard really serves as a backyard. The backyard is sort of like the side yard with this 1 foot reduction. I think is well within the, I know that yard pretty well, the backyard. So there's a quite distance still from the hospital. And with this design, with this addition, they really keep the house as is from the front. You don't see anything, right? It's beautiful. It's consistent with the neighborhood, so it's all good. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak on the application?
Yeah, hi. My name is Mark Kaminsky. I live at 32 Lakeview. I too am friends with the Miles, and I go over to their house at every single opportunity I possibly have because it's such an enjoyable place to be. They run a great show. It's a wonderful home, and I appreciate those of you who give up your time to consider matters like this. And I thank you for doing it because it's such a lovely village. It deserves the kind of protection that you give it. And simultaneously, I think homes like the Mileses deserve encouragement for the incredible care and love and upkeep that they give it and help in so many ways to make this village as lovely as it is. And I think the addition that they're going to make is only going to enhance that home and therefore our collective experience in this village. And I'm all for it. And, the fact that it's not even going to be, visible seems to me to make it even more of a slam dunk that we would want to do this. And the fact that they've gone to lengths to accommodate concerns of their neighbors, well, even more so. They're wonderful people. It's a wonderful home. It's a great addition, and I'm all for it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak on the application? Okay, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor? Okay,
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, because it's a Zoom video conference, if you could just poll the board members when you're taking votes, this way we could have it recorded.
yes.
Thank you.
So appreciate the application and I think the primary aspect of the application, I'm going to make a motion to approve it, is that the addition is going to be on the back end of the property in a very awkward lot that is not going to be visible to the general public. It's going to essentially only be visible by the neighbors, and the neighbors who have spoken have voiced support for it. Like we discussed, they could actually expand the house in different directions, and that would probably be a detriment to the neighborhood. And they could expand the house without asking the board for a variance, but they're here in front of the board to expand into their backyard to where the general public's not going to see, because that's really the appropriate way to expand this house without affecting the neighborhood. So I think, the board is within its good judgment to approve the application, given that it's not only going to be not an undesirable change to the neighborhood. If they did it any other way, it would be undesirable. Yes, it may be self-created hardship, but that's not the only consideration we give to applicants of this type. It's also, I have to say for the record, it meets the requirements for a type 2 action under SEQA 617.5. Is there any other reasons the board would like to speak about in terms of approving the application right now? Or any other comments? Yes, Margaret.
I'm new to this particular property, but I read through all the documentation today, and everything that I've heard tonight and everything that I've read is congruent with, the doing the best they can with a pie-shaped lot. And clearly Phelps has given their approval, their neighbors have given their approval, and I thought it was an act of good faith to reduce the variance request by a foot.
Agreed. Any other comments from the board? Okay, so I will make a motion to approve the application. And is there a second?
Margaret seconds.
Thank you, Margaret. Are there any other board members in favor?
I am Craig in favor.
Yes.
Craig Lisk, Richard and Sandy. Thank you.
Unanimous.
Good luck with your construction.
Thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate it. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for the thorough presentation.
Okay.
Well done.
Now on to agenda item number 2, involving Sleepy Hollow Associates LLC. And I will read the public notice. Please take notice that the Zoning Board of Appeals of the Village of Sleepy Hollow will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, December 16, 2020 at 8 p.m. to hear and consider the application submitted by Sleepy Hollow Associates LLC as contract vendee, requesting approval to convert part of the existing commercial spaces to 16 residential apartments, where the following variances from Chapter 450 of the Code of the Village of Sleepy Hollow are required. 1, Article 7, 450-41E, Supplementary Regulations, Off-Street Parking and Loading Space. Required parking spaces, 43. Existing parking spaces, 43. Proposed parking spaces, 39. 2, Article 7, 450-41F, Supplementary Regulations, Off-Street Parking and Loading Space. Required loading zone 1, existing loading zone 0, proposed loading zone 0. 3, Article 7, 450-41D1, Supplementary Regulations, Off-Street Parking and Loading Space. Off-street parking areas for 3 or more vehicles shall be effectively screened by a fence of hedge where no screening is proposed. 4, Article 8, 450-51C, Supplementary Regulations to specific uses, mixed-use commercial and residential developments. The non-residential uses of a mixed-use building shall be limited to the first-story level of a building where 2 apartments are proposed on the first floor level in the rear of 49 Beekman Avenue. The properties involved in the application are located at 45, 47, and 49 Beekman Avenue, are situated in the C2 zoning district, and are shown on town tax assessment maps as section 11511, block 3, lots 27, 28, and 29. Plans and other materials associated with the proposed application may be reviewed and downloaded from the village's website. Due to public health and safety concerns related to COVID-19 pandemic, the public hearing will not be in person. In accordance with the governor's executive order number 202.1, the public hearing will be held by video conferencing and a transcript will be provided at a later date. The public will not be permitted to attend the public hearing in person at any remote location where a planning board member, a zoning board member may be situated, or at any other location. The public will have an opportunity to see, hear, and provide comments on the public hearing, however. The public hearing can be watched live on cable TV, online on the village's website, and through Zoom video conferencing. If any interested member of the public would like to comment on the application, he or she can call into the meeting or can speak through Zoom video conferencing. Written comments may also be sent in a manner ensuring receipt by 4 p.m. on the day of the public hearing by mail to Chairman Timothy Church, care of the Village of Sleepy Hollow, Department of Architecture, Land Use, Development, Buildings, and Building Compliance, 28 Beekman Avenue, Sleepy Hollow, New York, or by email to Sean McCarthy. Please check the village's website for updated information and instructions to participate in the public hearing dated November 23rd, 2020 by the order of the Zoning Board of Appeals of the Village of Sleepy Hollow. There are a number of documents submitted in this application, approximately 11 of them: a completed application, an escrow agreement, a narrative in the form of Kyle McGovern's letter, zoning compliance form, environmental assessment form, property survey, photographs of the property, site plan, names of the property owners within 200 feet, area map, and architectural drawings, about over a dozen of them. Sean, how are all the returns in terms of notices to the neighbors?
Yes, notice was provided and proof of notice was submitted to the department.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we are happy to hear the application at this time.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Kyle McGovern with the law firm of Lyons McGovern. And with me presenting tonight is David Mooney of David Mooney Architects. He'll be here. Also, the developer, Philip Adler, is present with us. He's the principal of Sleepy Hollow Associates. And again, we're excited to bring this project to the village. As I set forth in my November 16th letter to the board, and I submitted a second letter of December 8th. What we're looking to do is seeking to revitalize 3 underutilized commercial properties located on Beekman Avenue. And again, as you indicate, it's 49, 47, and 45. It's the Tompkins Mayapack Bank building on the corner. It's the professional offices building next door and the post office next door. All 3 properties are next to one another. And basically what we're looking to do is looking to continue to have the commercial use on the first floor level of these buildings and convert the upper floors from commercial to residential, and essentially constructing 16 apartments for rent. This change in use this change in use and mixed use is a permitted use under the C2 zone where it sits. We worked before the planning board last month, and they sent us out to the zoning board of appeals for several variances. 49, which is the bank building, and 47, which is the professional building, is where the apartments will be. 45 Beekman Avenue is a single-story building, and it's where it's where the post office is. And basically, there's no action planned at that site. We expect that the post office is going to extend a very favorable lease for many more years. So there's going to be no change to that building. This project overall will stay entirely within the current footprint of the building. There'll be improvements and updates to the front facade on the Beekman Avenue side. Again, no changes to the facade itself. There'll be minor exterior alterations to the rear and Washington Street side. Again, all improvements and updates. This project is certainly consistent with and will be furthering the goals of the village's comprehensive plan. I know Ms. Spiro's on tonight, so she's, again, we are definitely consistent and staying within the intent of the comprehensive plan. And the idea, the target market here that we're looking for is young professionals and couples starting out to rent these workforce units. And again, the developer of this, Philip Adler, is he's a longtime developer in our area. He's got the experience and the resources to bring this project to the village. He's done successful developments in Westchester County, Dobbs Ferry, Peekskill, Rye, and he also grew up in the Rivertown. He grew up in Ardsley, so he's very interested in having this project local in nature. What I'd like to do, again, I'm assuming the board is familiar with these buildings. I can certainly ask David to put up some photographs if necessary, but I'd like to give some brief overview of the buildings in question and what's existing and what's proposed, and then I'd like to address the actual variances, Mr. Church. Okay.
That's fine.
49 Beekman Avenue is the bank building. That's the building on the corner. It is a 2-story building. It's occupied by Tompkins Mayapack Bank. It occupies the front part of that first floor. The entrance is in the front on Beekman Avenue. That will remain. We expect Tompkins Bank to stay there. That's the plan, is to have them remain a long-term tenant in the village. And again, everything is accessed through that front entranceway on Beekman Avenue. The rear part on the North Washington side of the street, there's a separate, distinct entrance. That entrance takes you into the 2 rear parts. There's offices presently in the rear part of that first floor, and there's a stairwell that brings you up to the 2nd floor. And currently, there's offices and conference rooms that are not being used, and They haven't been used by the bank for many years, and they are definitely in, I would say, poor condition and in need of upgrade. So what the proposal is to again keep the bank in the front part, but to the rear, put 2 apartments on the rear part of that first floor. Again, entering only through Washington Street, North Washington Street, and then the stairwell going up. There'll be 4 one-bedroom apartments on the second floor. On the 47 Beekman Avenue, that's the professional building. There's law offices on the first floor. In fact, I think since it probably at least the 1980s, there's always been a law firm or law offices on that first floor. There's currently on the second floor of the building, there's a consultant that's doing work with Edge on Hudson, and there's a third floor of that building that's vacant. In fact, it's locked and the windows are shuttered. There's no activity or anything going on in that third floor. And again, the idea is that the second floor will have 4 apartments, and the third floor will have 4 apartments. The first floor will remain professional offices. There's a possibility that there may be some retail use on that first floor, but as of now, the intent is to keep again, it will be commercial, but keeping the professional offices there. And a commercial use obviously permanently on that first floor. If any of the board members would like to see some of the renderings, or they want Mr. Mooney to walk you through the renderings, we're fine. We're happy to do that. Otherwise, I'd certainly like to start talking a little bit about the variances, the parking lot, and things of that nature. So I defer to you, Chairman Church.
Any of the board members like to say, Margaret? I think it would be good to see, the interest on the North Washington side and the renderings in the front. I think that'd be helpful for the board.
Okay. All right, great. So,
I also have a question, if I may.
Yep. Please.
sure.
You mentioned at the 49 Beekman location, you mentioned that you were proposing a 2 one-bedroom apartments on the first floor. And then you also mentioned 4 one-bedrooms on the second floor.
Correct.
But there are 8. You suggested there were going to be 8. I think you might be. Did you mean to include the 1 2-bedroom and the 1 studio?
Yeah. So you know what? Yeah. So it's definitely 2 one-bedrooms on the first floor, and it's going to be. And David will walk us through. It is 8 in total. Correct, David?
Correct. It is. It's
Yeah,
a 2-bedroom and a studio on the second floor. Yeah. So it gives you a total of 8 units in 49. If I can.
Thank you.
Share my screen. Let me see if I can. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, good. Let me just, that's the parking. So this is the ground floor plan. These are the 2 one-bedroom apartments that Kyle referred to. They both access off. This is North Washington. This gray section here is the Tompkins Bank, which accesses off this front entry, which is on Beekman. This is the entrance on North Washington that takes you into the staircase to the second floor, which has the additional 6 units. And these are the 2 one-bedroom apartments, which are on top of the 2 one-bedrooms down below, a 2-bedroom apartment, a studio, and another 2-bedroom apartment here for 8 units in 49 Beekman. Then this is the North Washington Street elevation. These are the entrances to the 2 ground floor units, and this is the entrance to the staircase that takes you to the upper units. Other than the change to, right now there's a walk-up teller stations that used to be here when the bank occupied the back half. These are the only changes on the Washington facade here. The balance of the facade on North Washington will stay the same. This is Beekman Avenue. This elevation will stay basically exactly the same, other than cleaning it up. The bank will be on the first floor, and these will be residential units on the upper floor. This is the rear elevation, which will have some additional windows for the units on the back. This faces the parking lot. So this is the second floor of 47 Beekman, which will have 4 one-bedroom units on it. This is the staircase that fronts onto Beekman. You enter in up the staircase, and you'll have 4 single one-bedroom apartments on this floor. And then the third floor, we continue up the same staircase, has 4 one-bedroom apartments. The 2 apartments on this level have a small den area for kind of a home office space. The ground floor of 47 will remain commercial, hopefully retail tenants facing Beekman and office tenant to the rear. And as I said, 45 Beekman will remain the post office. This is the front elevation of 47 Beekman. This basically will stay the same. This will be a retail tenant. This is the entry into this floor. These upper levels will be apartments, same facade, and the same on the rear side. And that's basically the layout of the 2 residential buildings. And we go back to the this is the existing parking site plan right now. It had the 43 parking spaces. We went in and did a study of the actual size of the parking spaces so that we knew we'd have spaces that meet the municipal requirements. So we basically are proposing to restripe the parking lot. And in the process of restriping the parking lot and providing legitimate handicap spaces, we ended up losing the 3 parking spaces, and then we lost an additional space by creating a enclosed refuse area in that parking lot. So that's the area for the main parking in the rear, entering in off North Washington, circulating through, back out to North Washington. And then the post office lot comes in off Beekman, coming in this area, and then circulating out the back. These spaces basically are used mostly by the post office people. The balance of these spaces will be for tenants, both commercial, retail, and the residential tenants. And Kyle, if you want to get into the variances, I can leave this screen up.
Sure. I guess, are there any questions from the board for David before we talk a little bit about what variances we're looking for?
No.
Okay. So again, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, our initial submission to the board, we were looking for a variance for the parking spaces. As David explained, based on his calculations, the number of spaces we require for this new use is 43. When they went back and got real, because some of the spaces were pretty small, and so basically David did a complete survey to give kind of real spaces laid out, and so now we've dropped down to 39 spaces. So again, we lost. We're only 4 spaces below the required amount. We think that this particular variance is not substantial, based on the numbers of parking that we're we actually are providing, and also based on the fact that with the commercial and residential use, we believe that the variance becomes less substantial because during the day, it's going to be primarily used by the commercial tenants. And then when the residents come back in the evening, the commercial tenants aren't there, and you have less, the tenants will be using it in the evening. And the same applies towards the weekends where, again, maybe the bank will be open for a few hours on a Saturday, but essentially the commercial sides are usually not open. And again, leaving more space for the residential side. And again, the numbers themselves as well certainly lend itself to not being a substantial variance. And in terms of the loading zone, and the other variance that we're looking for is that this current lot does not provide and has never provided for a loading space obviously it's been a commercial use since at least the 1960s, and there's a post office there, and they haven't had the need for that loading zone. And the reason being is that the Sleepy Hollow post office is a satellite to Tarrytown. Tarrytown gets, we share the same zip code. Tarrytown handles all the mail deliveries, and then it's brought over in, I would say, smaller trucks to Sleepy Hollow. But the point being is that the post office itself has not, and we do not believe will need a significant loading zone. And the type of commercial use that's coming in is not a heavy industrial type use that, again, would warrant the loading zone. So we think that the makeup, the configuration of the lot now, and the way it's worked, the way it's laid out, should be sufficient for residential deliveries and I guess the lesser commercial deliveries. We also, during the planning board submission process and in discussions with the planning board and with the village engineers, we also it was determined that we would need a variance for that landscape screening in the rear parking lot, and that would be on the top part of the layout. Under the village code, where you have a mixed use that we're looking to do, where it's abuts a residential district, it requires a 25-foot setback, and in particular a 10-foot landscaping buffer under the village code. This parking lot was built in 1963, and it is it is a pre-existing non-conforming use. We cannot meet any of those setback requirements, and in fact, there is a fence as it sits now. There is a fence that runs along that property line between the back lot and the residential unit. So again, we would be looking for a variance from that setback requirement. Again, I would note that a large part of that area in question is the parking lot. I will call it the bank parking lot. A large portion of that property line runs along the same parking lot for the actual residential unit. So it's not as if the parking lot is sitting along the entirety of this building. In fact, a large portion of that fence line is adjoining or adjacent to the parking lot and the driveway to that multifamily.
David, do you mind articulating that with the visuals?
Yeah, that property line is right here. So our fence and our property line are right along here. On the opposite side, this is the access drive, and then this becomes the parking lot for the multifamily. So it's really parking lot to parking lot.
Is there another drawing rendering that you have just to show that? If there isn't.
I don't know. Let me see if I have. I don't know if it shows in this photograph or not. No, but while we're here, I'll try to find a photograph and share the screen. If you just give me a minute while you're showing. Okay.
And so essentially and one of the things that the engineers had pointed out, and we're certainly interested and will do, is we'll put some sort of screening along that fencing, but we'll take steps to try to, minimize the visual sight line from the actual multi-family property to the to the parking lot, among the other improvements that we'll make. So we think it's going to be there is a large chain link fence large chain link fence that runs between there now. I think we can put some sort of screening within that fencing to help minimize the impact of the parking lot and where the residents are, their sight line.
How much
So again,
space do you have, to put a dividing barrier between the parking lot and the next property? Do you have space for landscaping, or is it simply enough space to run a chain link fence?
Yeah, I would say there's not room for landscaping. Literally, the fence is already there. I think it literally is right on the property line. And for us to put landscaping, then we're going to lose parking spaces along the back. So is that looks like
that's the picture of, there's a little bit of landscaping, as you can see here, growing on the fence. This is the fence line.
Yeah.
This is our curb line. That's the adjacent parking lot behind us.
Mhm.
That's the corner of the multifamily building. So it's basically parking lot to parking lot. There might be, 2 to 3 feet of land. I'm not quite sure how much might be on the multifamily side, but it's a very narrow strip of land.
How high can that fence be?
This chain link fence, I would say right now is probably about 5 feet tall.
Yeah.
And I think what we would propose would be a chain link fence with a vinyl weave pattern to it so that you can't see through the fence. That would provide some screening between the two properties.
That looks a little smaller than 5 feet to me. What I'm asking is can that fence be 5 feet under village zoning laws? I'm not sure it can all the way to the front property line.
I think it has to be 6 feet. I think
That fence in a commercial district is permitted to be up to 6 feet high.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So I'm just asking some questions and invite comments from the board, but how high do we want that fence to be? Can we make that a requirement of a variance? If we want to dictate a height to that fence at all. And I welcome any feedback from the applicant on that as well.
This is Garrett. My biggest concern with the fence is like, if we put it up to 6 feet, if we allow it, will it be a problem? I'm going to ask Sean. Or can it stay at 6 feet just for privacy for the other residents?
Well, the fence is permitted to go up to 6 feet as of right. I think the question is whether or not the board, it's not 6 feet right now. So the question would be, does the board want to impose a condition of the variance, which would require them to change the fence out and make it a specific height other than what it is?
So I'm asking the rest of everyone. So do we want to do it 6 feet just for privacy of the other residents if we agree on this?
I think it should be at least, I think 6 feet is good for privacy on both ends of it.
This is Margaret. I agree with that, but I have some other concerns about this.
Yeah, I have other concerns too.
Okay, I mean, I tend to agree that a high fence with a visual barrier in it is probably ideal for that location.
I agree with that.
I guess on behalf of the applicant, I think we can certainly accommodate that if necessary, if the board requires it. And I think again, that having that weave as David indicated would be a nice barrier.
Okay.
The multi-use building on the other side of the chain link fence is what, please?
It's a 5-family, 5 apartments.
5 apartments. And the access to that parking lot is from which street, please?
North Washington Street.
So it's all North Washington. Thank you.
It actually abuts the parking lot of this property, the driveway.
Thank you.
I have,
I'm sorry, while we have this picture up, is there any concerns about the property on the right-hand side? We're looking at the fence in front. There's nothing on the right-hand side, and if you go there, there's absolutely no fencing of any kind. And I know that the house literally by the post office, people come out on that area. If there was a fence there, they would not be able to come out. So is there a plan for that?
So I'm sorry, Ms. Kerr, you're saying that if a fence goes up on that side, that cars can't
Right.
turn in that back area?
Yes, if the house literally next to the on the right hand side,
Right.
the driveway part, I have seen people come out on the side of the house coming. There's like a stairs there, and people come out of there. If there was a fence or something, I think it would make it very difficult.
I mean, there is a back.
We could look at that. I know you had it up before. Maybe that would help.
I often go to the post office, so I see people there all the time.
Because I know there's a curb. There's definitely a curb that delineates between the two properties, right?
Yes, and
Yeah, okay.
but like
This-
I believe there's a might not be a entrance, but people come out of those stairs. I've seen it.
I
I
believe-
wonder if it's like a fire stairs or something.
Yeah, they're big wooden stairs. I know
Yes.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, David, it's the white building next door. I don't know if you have any pictures that show it.
I don't think I do. I think the
So
picture.
it would just be left the same way it is now.
Yeah, I don't think that, yeah, I don't think that those stairs that come down are going to be, are that close to the property line. But again, I'm not certain. I don't know if we're going to be putting a fence along that line. I mean, you could even see there's a chain.
Yeah, there's a
link.
chain.
There's demarcation and there is a curb cut. There's definitely a curb that runs up and down. But I don't recall that those stairs being that close to the property line or the driveway for the post office side, that a fence would impede it. And again, I'm not saying that we're going to put a fence in, but I'm just commenting on that. I don't think it's that close to the property line. And in fact, the cars have to go up, and isn't there a driveway that runs to the
That's
back
the
of the building
driveway,
right
yeah.
next to it? So,
It's exactly that's where you enter.
yeah, okay. All right.
Dawn, is the requirement for the fence or hedge only applicable to the north side of the property, or is it also applicable to the east side?
It's just the north side that abuts the residential district.
Right. So you're applying for a variance for the lack of a fence or hedge at the photograph we're looking at.
Yes, to the rear of the parking lot that abuts the residential
Okay.
property.
And while you have this photo, is this the corner where the refuse area will be?
Correct. The refuse area would be right in this area right here on the site plan.
Okay.
Okay.
Right, and so again, you see the conditions. It is a pre-existing non-conforming use. So again, that's why we are subject to the fence and the weaving and the improvements to the fence, that we're looking for a variance for that part of the property. Again, because if we were to put a buffer in there, then that would impact the parking spaces. It would basically eliminate probably 15 to 20 spaces along the top area there. The other variance that we're seeking is the mixed use, the supplemental regulation, which under the supplemental regs, it requires for mixed use that the dwelling units be permitted on the upper levels and not on the ground floor or first story. And the supplemental regs also require, conversely, that the non-residential uses be limited to the first floor level. So, and we're talking specifically about 49, the bank building. So basically, what we have it is technically the residential component in the back. Those two back units is technically on the first floor, but we would argue that with the separate entranceways, you have a separate entranceway on North Washington Street, separate and distinct from the commercial entrance on Beekman Avenue, that is certainly elevated, that it ought to be an allowable use. That in fact the commercial first floor commercial level intent is still maintained by having that bank building there on 49.
Could you go back to the visual screen where we can see each other, if you don't mind?
Get rid of stop sharing.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
For either Sean or Tim, I'm having trouble understanding what the rationale would have been or is for that regulation that limits, a first floor that the mixed use can't be residential, and that the upper floors, if it has residential, can't be also commercial.
Oh, no, let me take a stab at that.
Sure. So that's currently the way the regulation exists, that the commercial aspect of a mixed-use building is on the ground floor level, limiting the residential uses to the upper levels. I will say that I know the village board is concerned with that condition as well, and it has been a topic that's open for possible future amendments to the zoning code.
Okay. But there's no safety issues or anything like that, correct?
No, it's basically just a planning issue.
Okay.
To keep consistency on a commercial district where you wouldn't have the interruption of the commercial aspect on the ground floor and being interrupted by residential, different type of a use at that level. So it's just a way of separating it.
Okay.
And that's historically the way it's been looked at. There has been other variances in the village that has permitted that change, and the board has granted those variances in the past.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. And to that point, and again, there's going to be, with the separate entranceways on Beekman Avenue in North Washington, I mean, there is going to be, that intent is going to be met. They'll be separated. There's not going to be interaction there. They are separate and apart. And to Sean's point, there have been, there is a precedent for allowing residential on a first floor mixed use. The former Alter's Bakery down on Cortlandt Street is allowing, it has a residential on the first floor. There's a property across the street from Alter's Bakery next door to the Rock of Salvation Church that also hasn't allowed, that was commercial, now is residential. And likewise at the top of Cortlandt and Beekman, there was I think it's a laundromat or commercial use that now is residential. So again, and I think, as I mentioned, at the Beekman Avenue side, that's the true commercial side to this property, and that the bank predominates that side. And I think, although we're getting a variance, I do think the fact that we have two separate entranceways, really, it's almost looked at as, even there's some sandbore maps that our client found that show that these buildings may have been two separate buildings at one. The actual 49 was two separate buildings at one point, but we feel that this variance is should be granted, just given the fact that it's such a distinct entranceway and separate and apart.
Margaret,
So
I do. Excuse me, looking to the future, if that bank decides not to be a bank there anymore, that could cause problems, perhaps?
Problems in what sense? In terms of, I mean,
Loading dock?
the entranceway remains the same, that the entranceway will be through Beekman Avenue.
So that, I'm just thinking it through. If, all right, so it's no longer a bank and it's now a business that requires loading and unloading. It obviously can't be done from the rear, and there's not one there anyway. So I'm just trying to think of what would happen in the future.
So again, I hate to look to the past, but I mean, the past has had other commercial uses in there, and they haven't had a loading zone. But again, I think what will happen in the future is, again, that parking lot has it's got one ways going in and out. I think there's areas there for trucks to stop and unload. Obviously, you don't want them on Beekman Avenue, but they do have the option of using the parking lot, or perhaps maybe the eastern part of North Washington on the corner there. Again, if that becomes necessary, but if there's a business like an Amazon that wants to move in there, that's not going to happen. So,
Okay.
I'm certain that'll be high on their request
Right.
about.
I'll also add to that, just as this applicant is before you now for a change of use, if the bank or that type of a use was to move out and a different use wanted to move in, they'd be back before the planning board at least initially to review things like loading and parking and things of that nature, where possible restrictions or conditions could be made as part of that approval process. And likewise, if maybe a future use had a demand for more parking, it might be back before your board as well.
Like a restaurant.
I have a question. From what I recall, there's also an entrance in the back by the parking lot. I recall that because the Portuguese Club used to be there, and there was a way of getting to the back because we used to unload and load things for the kitchen downstairs. So I doubt it exists anymore, but we used to unload. So there is a door or something in the back. So is that going to stay or it's going to be gone?
Dave, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I think right now that's on the lower level because
Yes.
it drops down in the back. I think the idea is to use the lower level of both buildings for storage space for the tenants, for the residential tenants, for bicycles and anything else they have they can't keep obviously in their unit. So those areas would be cleaned up and used as storage. And there's a possibility of having some laundry space down in there. But it is at a lower level. It's not
Right.
good, so it doesn't affect the ground floor commercial tenants.
So you would keep that door. So
Yeah, correct, because it provides access to that basement, so you don't have to go into it, go down.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question. So my understanding is that you're looking for a variance for the back fence, and also you need more parking spaces as well, right?
Correct.
So, I mean, obviously, that's a concern in town, in that part of the town, because at night all the restaurants use that parking for their customers. So that's going to be a big hit.
Yep.
And also my fear is that the board, we've done this before, is that we've granted these variances for first floor apartments, and one was just cited now as a existing, so we're kind of like catching ourselves. We're being, I guess, what we've done before is now being used as precedent, and that concerns me as well with the ground floor living spaces.
Yeah, again, I understand, and the precedent is, I mentioned it tonight, and it certainly is, it is something that the board has to keep in mind. But again, I look at this particular space, and I know you're talking generally about precedent, but for this bank building is this very distinct. It has a it has a front entrance on Beekman Avenue and it has a separate entrance for the residential. They will not intersect. So I really think from a precedent standpoint, or lack thereof, I mean, this is a very unique property. I know you hear the word unique often, but this is truly two separate entranceways. So I don't believe that this will set a bad precedent. It should this board agree to grant this variance, in my opinion.
I'll just provide my quick comment on that, and that is the fact is, I believe I understand that ATM machines are going to come out of the North Washington side, and you're simply going to have residential entrances. And that to me is more in keeping with the North Washington Street and the buildings back there. It looks less commercial than it does now. To me, would constitute an improvement to that part of the building.
I agree.
And would make it makes this application unique from other applications.
And can you also address the parking space issue, or because you're taking away more spaces, obviously, for this project?
Yeah. So again, on that, again, there are 43 spaces there right now. Again, I think the spaces are a little tight. They're, again, so given the commercial and the residential side, they want to, the Sleepy Hollow Associates wants to put real parking space in there to avoid difficulty in the future. So they did a true survey of the spaces. So we lost some based on that alone. And then they're also going to the garbage receptacle area. They're putting in a screening on there to make it more aesthetically pleasing. So they lose a space there as well. So again, I think they've looked at these spaces in good faith. And again, I think 4 spaces out of 39 is I would call it a not a substantial, a minimal variance that we're asking from this board. And I would also add that, basically the entire inner village is a pre-existing non-conforming use. So it's very difficult to cite, and I'll address that at the end when I go through my variance elements with the board. But again, there's not a lot of opportunity in this village right now to do this type of project that has, I would say, actually a very very good number of parking spaces built into it already. I don't know if I answered your question now.
Yes,
I
you did.
question if Richard's done, sorry. In looking at the design, trying to understand those ground floor residential units, would they be considered to be made ADA accessible? Just thinking about this unique opportunity where you have a ground floor residential unit, and if someone is wheelchair bound, and that could be an ideal apartment for them because they're not having to utilize an elevator or stairs. I don't know if the way that they're currently designed would suit someone with that sort of disability, but I just thought I'd ask the question. And if we're to consider making a variance to make this building have those type of units on the ground floor, let's make them as inclusive as possible. It's a thought.
Those 2 units can be they're handicap adaptable. So if a handicap tenant came in with minor alterations, they could make the unit accessible to themselves. So you put in ahead of time all the extra supports in the bathroom for grab bars, and you do all the things to prepare for it. But you actually install the grab bars and things until you have a tenant that makes that request. And typically the tenant at that point would pay for those modifications that they would make. And then when they leave those modifications, they could remove the grab bars. It doesn't harm you.
That's not an
So
aesthetic.
those 2 would be at grade, so you would be able to wheel in and wheel out, and which is the number 1 accessibility to the unit. And then once inside, they would meet the requirements for a 1-bedroom apartment for a handicap tenant.
Thank you. The 2 other issues that usually come up are the entry door and whether or not it had an assist. for getting in and out, and if it's got appropriate clearances. And
They would have all the clearances. It would really just be once a handicapped tenant came to rent, you would make whatever modifications you need. They wouldn't be made ahead of time.
right. I guess it's trying to make it as seamless as possible, so it seems inviting.
Yeah, that's how, it's basically done so that you don't have to go in and rip walls apart. You can make minor modifications to make it adaptable.
Thank you. The other question that I had, I think you might have answered, and just thinking about urbanites that might be relocating here, and they may not have cars, or may eventually get them. I think the pandemic's pushed more people to get cars, but just you mentioned that there's storage that would be accessible to the unit owners for bikes. So that would be as of right. They would be able, if they had another way. So if they didn't have a car, but they had an easy to use bike room that was accessible to them, that's built in as part of the design.
Right, the idea is to use the 2 basement levels for tenant storage for bicycles and anything else that they need to store that they can't keep in their apartments.
Thank you.
Great place to have a bike, to get to the train station. You don't need a car.
Right.
So, we thought it would be a great idea to provide that storage.
I agree. Thank you.
Do you have these are rentals and not for sale. Do you have a price range of what where are we talking about as far as money?
I would say market rent.
Yeah. I would say, yeah, he's correct. Yeah, now it's going to be market-based rent. What the market derives. It's not going to be any sort of affordable type situation, affordable housing type thing. It's just going to be market-based rent. But we don't know what that is at this point.
Any other questions from the board? Does the applicant have any other points to make?
Yeah, just to look at the elements of the variance. First I'd argue that this will not result in an undesirable change to the neighborhood character. In fact, I would say it would greatly enhance this predominantly mixed-use area. And to your point, Mr. Chairman, as you say, it'll make the North Washington side of the street more residential, which it is, and the Beekman Avenue side remains commercial, and it will have improvements from the exterior and beyond. It also, this project is consistent with the Sleepy Hollow Comprehensive Plan. Beekman Avenue is an action area, and obviously there's a lot of attention down on the western part edge on Hudson, but this upper portion is certainly in need of some improvement. And I think it really will enhance the character of the neighborhood. And again, the parking lot itself will have improvements, and it will remain essentially intact, but with improvements. Regarding the parking, again, I think I've already argued that it's not substantial. We're talking about 4 spaces and we're going to provide for 39. We're short 4 spaces. I already described how that variance is less significant with the commercial and residential nighttime, daytime. And again, the loading zone as well. I believe that, in the past, there hasn't been a loading zone in a commercial use. And I think that the intended mixed use will not add to that element. And I think the existing lot is sufficient to handle that. And again, the variances, I've already gone through the first floor mixed use, that there are other first floor that have allowed residential and mixed use. And again, the CPL Associates is unable to identify an alternative to these variances. Again, I've mentioned that this is a pretty unique property. Off-street parking is a problem in all villages in the river towns. I'm from Tarrytown. It's a problem. I know Sleepy Hollow. It's also difficult. So again, it's difficult to find this type of project and site it somewhere else on Beekman Avenue which is, again, an action area under the plan. Again, we feel it's an ideal location, but we could not find any alternatives to this variance. And again, as I mentioned, moving that fence to have that buffer area, we're going to lose, 15 parking spaces. So again, that's another difficult alternative. Again, there's no adverse impact on the physical or environmental conditions. We believe there's a filed short form secret form has been filed. It's deemed in an unlisted action. We're staying within the entire footprint of the building. The front facades will get improvement. The village engineers have already commented through the planning board about drainage. There is existing drainage, and we've already we're going to clear out the drainage. Apparently, all the drainage areas on the parking lot are all backed up. David, you can speak to that, but I think they're all backed up and they have not been cleared. So we intend on clearing them, and we're confident that will also help with the whole drainage situation. And again, we're working with the village engineers on that. And again, as the board knows, it's not one. You have to look at the totality of the conditions, but certainly the difficulty is self-inflicted because we're identifying this property for development. But again, as I mentioned, there's not many properties really on Beekman Avenue that you can have this type of project. Lower Beekman Avenue is going through a generational revitalization. And again, this is Upper Beekman Avenue. I think, it's a great project to target, and maybe you have all these improvements going on both sides of Beekman. Maybe we can start bringing stuff to the middle, and it'll carry all the way through Beekman. So we feel that these variances are not substantial, and we think they are appropriate, and we're hoping that this board agrees.
Okay, well, thank you. And I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All board members said aye. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on the application? Ms. Ricker, I see you. We have your letter. I don't know if you're attempting to speak. You're on mute if you are.
No, I sent in comments, so I don't know that I need to add anything. I mean, I'm excited about the project. My concerns are mainly parking. My house looks into the parking lot, so I can I can see how full it is all the time, even during the pandemic, but particularly before the pandemic. And as a person who doesn't have a driveway, just concerned about the parking crunch that's going to happen. It's a loss of 4 spaces, but it's also a loss of 16 at least, plus the 4. So, but I don't think that's up to the developer. I think that's something the town really needs to look at and consider.
Could you just tell us what address you live at?
255 North Washington.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak on the application? Okay, hearing no others, I will make a motion to close the public hearing.
Margaret was second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All board members voted in favor. So I'll just provide my general comments, and please, if there's any comments that you'd like to make, feel free to interrupt me. I like to, maybe start with the last one, which is the residential units on North Washington and having those entrances. As Sandy pointed out, I think the accessibility is a benefit, but also to me, that's more consistent with North Washington than what we have now, which is essentially bank property and ATMs. So I think, we talked about precedent, and precedent is important, but Richard, from my view, circumstances change, usually each application is unique, and also conditions in the village change. So we're not necessarily bound by a precedent, that was rendered in 2015 or 2010. We are free. We have to make our own decisions based on the application and existing conditions. But I don't think we would be setting a negative precedent with that type of decision. As far as the loading zone, it's a pre-existing condition. And second, I think if there's a different type of use of the businesses, then planning will get involved in that issue. This is a transition to residences, and that requires less of a loading zone. I'm very frustrated when I drive down Beekman Avenue and there's a truck parked right in the middle of the road, double parked, because they're unloading and loading. That is a terrible burden on people who live off Beekman and some of the other streets. But in this case, they actually have a parking lot where that can occur. Yes, it is a pre-existing condition, but there's almost a cure already. So I would support that. I thought I'd consider the buffer and the parking together. I mean, the buffer, it's not that first of all, I think the board is in agreement. We would require a 6-foot fence with a visual barrier, because that's a benefit, I think, to the entire neighborhood, including the nearby residents. The variance is for the buffer, the lack of one specifically. And if the buffer is installed, then you just wipe out 15 spaces. I don't think anybody wants that. And so we, probably support the buffer. And so from there, we're going, really the crucial variance is the 43 to the 39 spaces. And as the applicant noted, a lot of that has to do with a simple redraw of the parking lines. My own personal experience driving my Dodge Durango into that parking lot, I don't ever want to do it again. You can't park in those lines. And, the redraw is probably going to benefit the people who are going to use that parking lot. And it's, obviously forced on the applicant due to regulations, and they're making the best of it. And then I also note the screening that's going to be provided for the dumpster area, which is favorable. And then, that building, I've been here since 2006. Nobody uses the top floors of that building. The fact that, we have a developer who's going to step in and develop that, I think, is a benefit to the neighborhood in general. Having residences on top of commercial space along Beekman is obviously not out of character with the neighborhood. It's in keeping with the neighborhood, won't be seen as unusual. Complies with the secret regulations. So in general, I'm in favor of all 4 variance applications. Are there any comments from the board?
I agree with you, Tim. Thank you for, sort of putting into words my thoughts. Certainly, if there was a loading zone or area that they were getting rid of, it would be a hard no for me, but it's not there now. Yes, losing the spaces is difficult, but I think, as Ms. Ricker said very eloquently, that it becomes more of an issue for the village itself to find more, figure out a way to get parking. What really bothered me the most was to hear that in the heart of our village, there's a whole floor that's shuttered and not being used, conference rooms that are abandoned. The fact that there's an opportunity to put some life and some activity and folks that can live in the village there sort of overrides those other concerns. So thank you.
Any other comments from the board? Well, okay, well, thank you all. I'll make a motion based on those comments to approve the variances with the condition that a fence be installed along the north side of the parking lot I will say this, at a height that the building inspector, works on with the applicant that they deem reasonable, and also a visual barrier as well. The reason I guess I had a little bit of second thoughts on requiring a 6-foot height is because maybe that's not appropriate all the way down. Just let's give Sean a little bit of discretion to work with the applicant to come up with something that's appropriate along that buffer. Sean, does that sound appropriate to you?
Yeah, I was going to suggest that you allow us to make that determination based upon working with the architects and engineers, simply because as you're pulling out of the lot onto North Washington, we want to be able to keep the site clearances open for cars coming down that one-way street, which kind of go pretty fast. So we may want to drop the height as you get closer to the street there. So if you do allow us to make that determination in conjunction with the planning board, that would be helpful.
Yes, I think that would be.
I agree with that.
Thank you.
I do too.
Okay, so based on that, those comments, I make a motion to approve the 4 variances with that condition. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Are there any no votes? So no board members voted in opposition. It's approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the board.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
You as well.
Thank you. And thank you, Brett, for having such a good knowledge of that area.
I park there often and I can't even find a parking spot.
But your indispensable knowledge about when I didn't know the Portuguese club was there at one time.
Oh, yes.
That's
Plenty
great.
of times I was there dancing.
I'll tell you guys, just before I go, I'll just give you, on the front of the building, of the professional building, it has the initials IOOF.
Yes.
Saw that.
That stands for the Independent Order of Odd Fellows.
Wow.
Oh, it's a club.
John Hughes told me that, so just a little fun fact, okay? Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, on to the third application tonight. That is involving the
Lighthouse Landing. Okay. Oops.
I'll read the application. Please take notice that the Zoning Board of Appeals, the public notice, excuse me. Please take notice that the Zoning Board of Appeals of the Village of Sleepy Hollow will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, December 16, 2020 at 8 p.m. to hear and consider the application submitted by Del Bello, Donnellan, Weingarten, Wise, and Wiedeker LLP on behalf of Lighthouse Landing Communities LLC to increase the permitted height of buildings located in Block O/P from 42 feet to a maximum of 48 feet, where the following variance from Chapter 450 of the Code of the Village of Sleepy Hollow is required. 1, Article 4, 450-20B5, Riverfront Development District, height and setback restrictions, maximum permitted building height 42 feet, proposed building height 48 feet. The property involved in the application is located at 199 Beekman Avenue, is situated in the RF zoning district, and is shown on town tax assessment maps as section 115.10, block 1, lot 1.1. Plans and other materials associated with the proposed application may be reviewed and downloaded from the village's website. Due to public health and safety concerns related to COVID-19 pandemic, the public hearing will not be in person. In accordance with the governor's executive order number 202.1, the public hearing will be held by video conferencing and a transcript will be provided at a later date. The public will not be permitted to attend the public hearing in person at any remote location where a zoning board member may be situated or at any other location. The public will have an opportunity to see, hear, and provide comments at the public hearing, however. The public hearing can be watched live on cable TV, online on the village's website, and through Zoom video conferencing. If any interested member of the public would like to comment on the application, he or she can call into the meeting or can speak through Zoom video conferencing. Written comments may also be sent in a manner ensuring receipt by 4 p.m. on the day of the public hearing by mail to Chairman Timothy Church, care of the Village of Sleepy Hollow, Department of Architecture, Land Use Development, Buildings and Building Compliance, 28 Beekman Avenue, Sleepy Hollow, New York, 10591, or by email to Sean McCarthy. Please check the village's website for updated information and instructions to participate in the public hearing dated November 23rd, 2020, by order of the Zoning Board of Appeals, Village of Sleepy Hollow. Sean, have all the returns been received on this application?
Yes, and proof has been submitted to the department.
Thank you. So I'm just going to very briefly summarize what we have in the application. We have the public hearing notice, the narrative letter prepared by the law firm, table of contents, statement of principal points, exhibit A, B, and C to the argument, the schematic building section of block O/P, the zoning board application parts 1 and 2 of 4, signed by Dale Strickland. All-purpose certificate of acknowledgement proxy statement signed by Dale Strickland, zoning board of application part 4 of 4, the disclosure statement, zoning compliance form signed by Andrew Tung, short environmental assessment form part 1, subdivision plat prepared by Control Point, Westchester County recording and endorsement page, bargain and sale deed without covenant against grantors acts. Lot 1 meets and bounds description and lot 3 meets and bounds description. That was a lot, but thank you for your patience, and I'd like to hear the application, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening to you and to members of the board and to Mr. McCarthy. My name is Janet Giris. I'm a partner with Del Bello, Dinelli, Weingarten, Wise & Whitaker in White Plains. I'm pleased to be here this evening on behalf of the applicant, Lighthouse Landing Communities, LLC, in connection with our application for an area variance for the mixed-use riverfront community known as Edge on Hudson. I believe that you're all familiar with the project. As you may be aware, construction of the project is ongoing, and Lighthouse Landing, who is the master developer, is currently seeking approvals for phase 3 of the project, including townhome units on block O and P, which is located across Palisades Boulevard from block J and on Legend Drive from block I. There are 20 townhomes proposed on that block beginning at the intersection of Legend Drive. And you may recall that we have been before this board before in connection with similar application for variances. So to give you a little bit of history and just to refresh your recollection, when this zone was approved back in, I think it was probably 1997, there was a 300-foot height restriction zone, which limited height in this particular area on the west parcel west of the tracks where these buildings are proposed. That was intended at that time to preserve views from the then proposed 65-foot tall buildings, which were proposed on the east parcel. Over the course of the approvals process for the project, the site evolved and the planned land uses for that east parcel changed so that by the time Lighthouse Landing's final environmental impact statement was accepted back in 2006, residential buildings were no longer proposed on that east parcel. And that parcel was then anticipated to be utilized for the Village Department of Public Works and for recreational facilities without buildings of 65 feet in height. In December 2014, that east parcel was conveyed to the Sleepy Hollow Local Development Corporation. And so the rationale for limiting the height in that 300-foot area no longer exists because there will not ever be residential buildings on that east parcel. So as we are going forward with the approvals for now, as I mentioned, block O and P, there are 3 units on that block. Actually, it's 2.5 units, which are within that 300-foot restricted area. And so we are seeking a variance to permit the construction of those townhome units from 42 feet to 48 feet. Andy Tung is with me this evening. He can pull up some drawings and show you that in more detail. But that 42 to 48 foot request would allow us to construct those townhome units consistent with the other townhome units that are located on the other blocks. In addition, I just want to point out that, as I mentioned, this affects really, the line goes through the third unit, so it's 2.5 units. The remainder of that block is outside of that 300-foot wide restricted area, and the permitted height in that area is 65 feet. So, these two that are 2.5 that are in that restricted area, currently restricted to 42 feet. Next door, we could go 65 feet. But we are seeking to do 48 feet here, as I mentioned, to be consistent not only with the design guidelines, but also with the remainder of the development in the vicinity. So Andy, I don't know if you're able to pull up the drawings and if you want to talk about it in a little bit more detail.
I am. Thank you, Janet. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Andrew Tung from Divney Tung Schwalbe. And I will share my screen with you. As Janet mentioned, when we were last before the board in 2018, we had only drawings to show. Since that time, a number of both the infrastructure, that is the streets, utilities, and the creation of the various blocks at Edge on Hudson and some of the buildings have begun to grow out of the ground. This shot is taken above the new roundabout at the intersection of Beekman Avenue and River Street, obviously looking towards the river. From the right side, you can, if you were able to see under the stack of people, the Metro North Railroad tracks, the brick buildings that parallel the tracks, we call it Block I. That was the first set of buildings within the 300-foot zone that Janet described, for which this board granted a variance from 42 feet to permit 48 feet in height back in 2015. To the left of those buildings, the green-clad building in the middle ground is the first of 3 buildings within Block E, and the tan-colored buildings beyond that, tan and gray colored, those are the attached townhomes in Block J. For both Block E and Block J, variances were obtained for similar height relief in 2018 from this board. And the Block O and P that Janet described is out of view from this point, but is beyond these buildings, the townhome buildings in Block J that front on Palisades Boulevard. Also in view here in the center of the site, just for information, are 2 sections of what's known as Tappan Zee Park that extend from the eastern portion of the site down towards the river and the riverfront open space that will wrap around the site on all sides with the lighthouse in the center on the left. In the foreground here, this shot was taken last week, is the parking structure within Block F, and in the direct foreground here is the yet undeveloped Block A, for which an application is currently before the planning board for retail space.
Andy, do you mind running the cursor or in the area where you're requesting the variance again?
Yes, it's these townhome buildings here are on the, let's see, on the south side of Palisades Boulevard.
Mm-hmm.
O and P is on the north side of Palisades Boulevard. So they would be just beyond these buildings here. That 300-foot zone runs about to the back of this Block E building and northward, paralleling the railroad and the Block I building. And I have a plan in my next view that shows that in plan view. So here we are looking north at the top of the page. The parallel lines in the center here are the railroad tracks. The blue colored zones, this is the RF district regulations that created the different height zones. As Janet mentioned, on the east parcel, that portion of the GM site that was to the east of the railroad tracks, the permitted height is 65 feet. In the center of the west parcel, that is also blue and 65 feet. And the purple is the 300-foot wide zone. That's 300 feet west of the railroad track property line, was that 42-foot zone. If I zoom in a little, so here are the, here's the purple zone, that 300-foot zone from the railroad track boundary westward. The three brown buildings, the brick buildings in the former photograph, or in the photograph, are the Block I buildings, and then the green clad building is a Block E building, and the gray and brown townhomes are in Block J. So in 2015, this board granted a variance to 48 feet for the Block I buildings. In 2018 for the Block E and the Block J buildings. These were all granted in concert with site plan applications that were made for those blocks at that time. In a similar manner, we are now before the planning board for the first set of OP townhomes, that is 20 townhomes directly north of Block J along Palisades Boulevard, and the 2.5 units for which we seek a variance today, a similar variance, sit at the corner of Legend Drive and Palisades Boulevard within that 300-foot zone. We also prepared a cross-section running from left to right where the two flags are, and that is the next. Let me zoom out again for a moment. So here's a cross section along that line, the railroad tracks here, the east parcel on the right-hand side, the 65-foot permitted. On the left-hand side, the center of the west parcel, again, the 65 permitted, and the purple zone, 300 feet west of the railroad tracks. This is Legend Drive. The Block I buildings, the zoning variance that was granted is denoted by the green shading on top of the purple. And what we're seeking today for the OP buildings, those three townhomes fronting on Legend Drive on Palisades as well, within that same green shaded area to 48 feet. So that's the essence of our request this evening.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
Could we remove the shared screen if nobody has a question about this drawing? There we go. Thank you.
I have a historical question, but it might be more for Sean than for the presenters. And I don't know if you know the answer, but just contextually, what was the driver for the 42-foot dimension in the first place when that was established for the planning?
So the 42 feet within that 300 foot of the railroad was in anticipation of having residential, proposed residential development on the east parcel on the other side of the railroad. So the thought of having a lower height there would give those units on the east parcel a more view westerly. And then the overall plan is actually that the height increases towards the middle of the property and then steps back down as you get towards the river. So after 2014, and when we knew that there wasn't going to be any residential development on the east parcel, that really was no longer necessary, quite frankly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions?
My question
I'm
is,
sorry,
why do you need the extra height?
Correct. I'm sorry, just to add to what I was saying before, I don't know if it was mentioned, but a variance was granted already for the Block J townhouses as well as the Block I apartment buildings, also to exceed that 42-foot height. So, sorry.
And I'll go back to my question, why do we need the extra height?
Right, so, and Andy can add to this as well. The additional height allows the applicant to construct each of the stories with 9-foot ceilings, which is necessary for the marketability of the units. Without the variance, they couldn't construct more than 8-foot ceilings, and it would certainly impair the marketability of the units and, you know, perhaps cause them to not be constructed. So that is what the standard is today. With regard to the variance and the request, the tops of the building, and Andy, correct me if I'm wrong, but the tops of the building step back a little bit. So that additional height is really not perceptible from the street level or from far away because of the step back in the top of the building.
That's correct. As the buildings face the street, and part of the plan for Edge on Hudson was that all the townhomes would face the street. The fourth floor steps back from the facade so that as you walk along the street, you only perceive the 3 stories of the townhome with the fourth floor sitting back from the street.
Right, and in addition, the variance would also allow those units to be constructed in a manner which is not only consistent with all of the other townhomes that are constructed on Block I and J, but, you know, is also consistent with the design guidelines.
So you're asking for the variance for 3 townhomes?
Yes.
Correct. The
To
balance
match
of the
the rest,
townhome.
basically, right?
Okay.
Yeah, the balance of the townhouse blocks, you can actually go up to 65 feet. So it just happens to be that this
Right.
few units fall within that setback dimension. And I will add too, once you actually see how these units are being constructed, you know, the fact that you have roughly, say, a 20-foot wide interior by up to sometimes 40 feet, one big open space, anything less than a 9-foot ceiling would kind of look a little out of proportion. So seeing the built product, I'll endorse that it definitely needs that extra height.
Yeah, I mean, the homes that are constructed to date have been extremely well received in the marketplace. So we're happy to be working on the next phase.
Just
Seems like a
surprised that this
straightforward-
wasn't thought of beforehand. I mean, you didn't, you know, with the marketability, and I'm sure you've done your research. Why wasn't this, you know, the height restrictions thought of before? 9-foot ceilings, big difference between 8-foot.
I think I could respond to that, Janet. This is Peter Chafkin from Edge on Hudson. I think it has to do with what Ms. Guris said at the beginning. This zoning is 25 years old almost. It's from the late 90s, and market norms have really changed to the point where it may have been, you know, the home buying public may have accepted instances of, you know, shorter ceiling heights than 9 feet.
Yeah, but when these buildings were first, when you guys came to us 5 years ago, you didn't think of the height. I mean, these were, you know, these weren't designed 25 years ago.
No, you're right. We did, which is why we were before this board 2 times already, requesting variances for this specific zone.
And I think
Right, so we've been referred to this board each time we bring a new phase or a new block to the planning board, which affects the height and which is affected by this particular restriction.
Yeah, I understand that, but I'm just wondering if you are building, I don't know, 20, 30 more buildings, are they not 9 feet or 8 feet ceilings? I mean, are you gonna come back each time to the board and
So
say,
in
well,
this particular block, only those first 3 units are within this restricted area. As you go west, in the middle of the second unit, and I think Andy probably has a drawing which can show you that, the height limitation goes up to 65 feet. So, the rest of this block could be built at 65 feet. That's not what's proposed. So it's just, as Peter mentioned, it is this restriction that was enacted 25 years ago when there were different uses that were contemplated on that east parcel. And as things developed and as the project evolved, those residential uses on the east parcel are no longer going to occur. And as I mentioned then, the rationale for this 300-foot wide restriction no longer exists.
Excuse me, board. This is John Stein. May I step in for a second? Andy, would you bring up the visual again? The zoning lines. Go back to the other page with the zoning lines. Plan view.
I'm trying to get rid of my stack of, here we go.
No worries. While you're trying to pull that up, let me just get into this. As somebody that's been involved in this project for approximately 23 years, that zoning was in place before we came to the project. I am one of the owners of the development and have been involved for 22, 23 years. You can see this mixed set of zoning lines that everybody's spoken about with regard to why historically the zoning lines have been in place, where we generally have a 65-foot max on most of the site. We obviously obtained the variance in the purple zone for the 48 feet. We've now expanded what is essentially a 48-foot, general overall building height for the entirety of the property, pretty much, except where it goes higher. So there's nothing really less than 48 feet. We're now expanding so that we can take advantage of the existing market and produce another 20 townhomes that will have the same advantage of the 48 feet. Actually, all but 3 of them already do have that advantage. So you've got those 3 small in that circle that's highlighted in green. You've got those 2.5 units that are not part of that. That's just where the zoning line happened to fall. We were not anticipating building that at this point, but now, because of market conditions, we've been very successful with our partners at Toll Brothers building out the townhomes. So at this point, we're now going to the next, call it leg over, and the next leg over has these 2.5, 2 and a quarter, 2 and an eighth townhomes that are outside of the zone. So to answer your question, Mr. Hughes, historically, it is what it is. It predated me, my involvement with the site more than 22, 23 years ago. And it's just a legacy of this, particular height that's on the variance lines that are on the zoning lines that are there. We're just looking for the correction of that. It is everything that everybody's testified to as far as the need for the height and the current market conditions is absolutely accurate. So it'd be essentially, leaving off this tail of the dog at 2 units that have, a lower height, which we would need to expand the units and do all kinds of individual accommodations to make these units really, marketable in today's marketplace. So just making them consistent with the rest of the entirety of what you see here at 48 feet. And again, we're in the rest of it's in the 65-foot zone. It's just accommodating these couple of units going to 48 feet. It's really as simple as that. You know, we're not asking for more variances than we need when we come up to that need. So now we're at that need that is essentially just, you know, just zoning lines cross where we're building buildings. So we're just asking for, you know, conformity. And that's as simple as it gets.
John, thank you. I just have a question then, maybe to Richard's point, just in terms of anticipating what may ultimately end up happening down the road, given the history of this, is that if you are fortunate enough to be able to continue to expand development, it's likely down the road, you might come before us asking for another variance each time you do it, because of the way that your development doesn't necessarily exactly follow where those guidelines were established 25 years ago or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's easy to respond to. Andy, if you can zoom out a little bit. So we're really talking about the distinction between the purple and the blue, right?
Right.
So the purple is 48, the blue is 65. You can see from here, everything that we've got essentially approved already is within that, where the 48 foot has been granted. Everything else is 65. We don't anticipate coming up with anything for, you know, more than 65 feet. It would be an extraordinary anomaly if we did, especially for things like townhomes, which is pretty much the balance of what we have. Well, it's 100% of what we have in OMP is really townhomes. Nobody's doing 6th floor, 7th floor walk-ups in townhomes. In fact, it would be extraordinary use. You know, even in Manhattan, you just don't have townhomes that are that high. You could certainly do it with elevators, but that would be well out of market conditions. The larger buildings on, you know, K, Q, R, M, you know, we're within a tolerance at 4 stories of what is really achievable through construction costs for those larger buildings. And there's already provisions for us to build up to 65 feet. So we really wouldn't be going more than 4 to 5 stories on those, which is within that 65-foot tolerance. Beyond that, you really need to get to 8, 10, 12 stories, which would be a significant variance, which we would have to, you know, come back to the board for. But, you know, nothing in this site, nothing in really, you can think of 1 or 2 buildings in the village or even anywhere near, you know, exceeding that 65-foot height. So, you know, that's not what this zone is for. So I don't anticipate really anything else coming out of that nature. Now, that's not to say in another 20 years the world doesn't change again, but, you know, there's really nothing generating that because of the construction costs and the types of buildings we have planned. You know, H, F, M, K, Q, R, that's about it. That's what we have left other than townhomes. So.
But to be clear, to respond to your question very fully, as we develop the site plan for the balance of the townhomes, I would expect that to the extent townhomes fall, to the extent townhomes fall in this zone, which is currently 42 feet, I would expect that we would be requesting a variance to get to the 48 feet as well.
Yeah.
But I think that from a mechanical perspective, I don't believe, and maybe Sean can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't believe we can request the variance from you for the area that I've just so crudely drawn until we have a site plan for that area pending at the planning board.
We just haven't noticed it for this particular hearing, so the scope of this approval will only be for the 3 in that area that you've indicated on your submission.
Right, and to answer the question going back, we may be back in that small defined area when we develop the rest of O&P. We're not developing the rest of O&P now, but you can see what that sliver does is essentially leave 1 unit in a particular building at a lower height than everything else, and everything else can be either 65 or 48. So it's just conformity and meeting market, you know, conditions.
Yeah, no, I get it now. I get it.
Yeah, I wasn't questioning your rationale, John. I was just trying to respond to Richard's question.
Yep.
And hopefully we've done so. Happy to answer, you know, to answer some nuances if that doesn't.
No, it's clear now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll make a motion to open the public hearing. Agreed, seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
Everyone's in favor? Is there anyone from general public that would like to speak on the application? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing. Second,
I do have a question. How come I'm the only one with snow behind me? Everybody else, I got people with like bright sunlight and clear sunny days, and I'm the only one with snow.
I could do this from my backyard and
I don't know what happened. I'm in the middle of a storm. I don't know about you people.
yeah.
On the side of a tree, so.
There you go.
I think I heard unanimity in closing the public hearing. So all board members agree. So want to thank the applicant, very clear drawings to help us work through the issues. Obviously, this variance only affects the buildings that apply in the 300-foot area. I will note that the 42-foot restriction, if we enforce it, would make that building look very anomalous and weird compared to the rest of that building it was attached to and the ones nearby. We'd actually be doing a disservice to the neighborhood if we try to enforce that. I don't think it's a substantial variance. I think it's in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. Absolutely has no environmental impact whatsoever. And although it may be a self-created hardship, that's not the only consideration we have, and it is SEQA compliant. Are there any other comments from the board before I make a motion to approve? Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the application as stated.
Second.
Oh, Julie seconded it.
Okay, Margaret seconds, Craig, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All board members voted to approve, no voted not to. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
you very much, ladies and
We
gentlemen.
appreciate it. Wishing you all happy holidays and stay well.
Yes.
Happy holidays.
Stay safe.
Take care.
Be safe, everyone.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
So thank you all, appreciate the meeting today on Zoom. Thought went really well, so thank you. We have minutes to approve.
Yep.
Oh, I'll just come out and say that Pamela did an outstanding job on the minutes. Those were difficult to do. I have no changes other than the one noted by Pamela in their email where she noted that Clinton was present at the November meeting.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the October and November minutes.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
I just abstained since I wasn't here, yeah.
5 votes.
Welcome aboard.
Yeah.
I didn't mention the resolution, Sean. Should I make a motion to approve the resolution as well?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Okay, so also make a motion to approve the